For my iMovie project, I am looking at and analyzing child soldiers, mainly in Germany during the Nazi regime. I will be analyzing the process in which child soldiers were recruited, used, and treated in the armed forces, and the rehabilitation process of child soldiers. Ultimately, I am arguing that children should not be punished for their actions during wartime because they are based on coercion, their recruitment is illegal, and finally, to continue their development post-conflict, they require special protection and rehabilitation. Child soldiers were a main element in the Nazi regime. In the classroom and in the Hitler Youth, instruction aimed to produce race-conscious, obedient, self-sacrificing Germans who would be willing to die for the Fuhrer and fatherland. Devotion to Adolf Hitler was a key component of Hitler Youth training. German youth people celebrated his birthday, April 20th, a national holiday, for membership inductions. German adolescents swore allegiance to Hitler and pledged to serve the nation and its leader as a future soldier. Schools played an important role in spreading the Nazi ideas to German youth. While censors removed some books from the classroom, German educators introduced new textbooks that taught students to love Hitler, obedience to state authority, militarism, racism, and anti-Semitism. The Hitler Youth and the League of German Girls were the primary tools that the Nazis used to shape the beliefs, thinking, and actions of German youth. Youth leaders used tightly controlled group activities and staged propaganda events such as mass rallies full of ritual and spectacle to create the illusion of one national community reaching across class and religious divisions that characterized Germany before 1933. It was founded in 1926, and in 1936, membership in Nazi youth groups became mandatory for all boys and girls between the ages of 10 and 17. After-school meetings and weekend camping trips sponsored by the Hitler Youth and the League of German Girls trained children to become faithful to the Nazi Party and the future leaders of the National Socialist State. In January 1933, there were 50,000 members of the Hitler Youth. By the end of the year, there were more than 2 million. By 1939, over 90% of German children were part of the Hitler Youth organization. This next image is an image of boys who are members of the Volksturm, a People's Army militia which by the end of the war was made up of the few male Germans who had not been sent to war, mainly boys under 18 and or men deemed too old to be at the front. By April 23, 1945, when the Battle of Berlin officially began, the Volksturm had some 60,000 fighters in the capital of Berlin. The Battle for Berlin, which lasted a week until April 27th, with official surrender on May 2nd, saw 80% of the Volksturm's young soldiers die. They had no mercy for child soldiers, particularly when you were slapped into an SS uniform, as most of us were, quoted one youth soldier recalling his time at war. This is actual footage of some of the Volksturm soldiers during the final days of Nazi Germany. In 1946, Allied occupation authorities required young Germans to undergo a denazification process and training in democracy designed to counter the effects of 12 years of Nazi propaganda. According to the Furman Humanities Review, the Hitler Youth's education on Nazi principles became the quintessential foundation of the organization that shaped the activities and training of its members. In addition to teaching about the race and ideologies of enemies, such as the Jews and Communists, instruction emphasized German history and the life of Hitler. Their most important handbook, which gave an overview of those Nazi principles, was entitled The Nazi Primer. In it, the goals of the Hitler Youth clearly echoed the ideas emphasized by Nazi leadership. The primer outlined complex ideas pertaining to German population and culture that are ultra-nationalist in attitude. Hitler is quoted in 1938 speaking about his child soldiers, saying that these boys and girls enter our organizations at 10 years of age and often for the first time get a little fresh air. After 4 years of the young folk, they go on to the Hitler Youth, where we have them for another 4 years. And even if they are still not complete National Socialists, they go to labor service and are smoothed out there for another 6 to 7 months. And whatever class consciousness or social status might still be left, the Warm Heart, which is the German armed forces, will take care of that. This shows just how much he played a role in shaping these children to be exactly how he wanted them. Hitler referred to these child soldiers as his purest creation. Now we need to address the question of whether or not recruitment and utilization of child soldiers in armed conflict is a form of child abuse.
The abuse of children as soldiers in armed conflict can be defined as the involvement of dependent, developmentally immature children and adolescents in armed conflict that do not truly comprehend, to which they are unable to give informed consent, and which adversely affects the child's right to unhindered growth and identity as a child. They cannot give informed consent or truly comprehend the consequences of their involvement in war. I believe that armed combat in childhood is a form of child abuse. It can lead to serious consequences, such as post-traumatic stress disorder. The inherent emotional abuse and acts of omissions by caregivers may cause behavioral, cognitive, emotional, or mental disorders of the child. For children who went through this, the objective should be to protect children of whatever race, religion, or political group from physical or emotional trauma, including death, and initiate a program to rehabilitate those children who are deeply damaged emotionally. After the war, these children survivors continued to pay a high price. They were SS, members of a criminal organization. They were shunned, and no one wanted to employ them. They were victims, but they were being treated as perpetrators. In the end, I think that children should not be punished for their actions during wartime because they are based on coercion and manipulation from those who recruited them. Children are not fully able to understand the consequences of their actions. Also, the very recruitment of children under the age of 18 is deemed illegal in international law. It follows that the perpetrators of these acts must be punished. Children should be considered victims of war crimes. The international community must take action to ensure that former child soldiers are properly rehabilitated and reintegrated into society. Alternative measures for children accused of war crimes must be considered to allow these abused children and their communities to heal and move forward. Such children must not be viewed as a lost cause because with the proper treatment and care, they can continue to grow into valuable members of society.